Virginia Woolf, who rebelled against the tradition of so-called materialist novel and novelists like H.G. Wells, Arnold Bennett, and John Galsworthy. She is known for her stream of consciousness technique and poetic style. Her main novels are Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, and The Waves. Mrs. Dalloway describes the events of one single day in central London through the mind of one character, Clarissa Dalloway, who is, in a way, character represented in title of the novel, Mrs. Dalloway. Clarissa Dalloway is the hostess of a party for high society friends later the same evening. Actually, Clarissa Dalloway is victim of isolation and loneliness. Her husband is a political figure, and he does not intervene in her private life. She chose him because she was afraid of possessive nature of her lover, Peter Wash, whom she rejected for the sake of more tolerant Richard Dalloway. But later in life, it proved that she gained one thing, but she lost many. She got freedom, but that freedom brought isolation and loneliness for her. She feels that she is hardly alive, and she goes to buy flowers for that party, which she in routine actually manages. On her way to floral shop, she comes across a couple, that's Captain Septimus Baron Smith and his wife Lisa. And this is mentally deranged character, the war survivor who once was a man of life, but First World War has snatched his senses. He's mentally deranged. He has lost his closest friend in the war, and it has affected his psyche a lot. The same character actually commits suicide the very same day. Though Clarissa Dalloway heard his name on the road, but she felt he was like her. During her party, when this news is shared that Captain Smith has committed suicide, she feels for him because she feels him her double. She feels that she shares the life which he was leading, but he showed courage to get rid of that life, and she cannot. That novel, that one day episode, actually captures the past of characters, mostly characters which are part of Mrs. Dalloway or Clarissa's life, including Peter Wash, whom she comes across near a park while going to market, and he also comes with her, have some exchange, but more is actually shown through their flashback, through their reminiscence. This novel contains many flashbacks to Clarissa Dalloway's past experience as she seeks to bring together past memory and present action, as she endeavors to balance a need for privacy with a need for communication with other people. In The Waves, Virginia Woolf takes six characters who are all at different stages in their lives. She explores how each one of these characters is affected by the death of a person they all knew well. In another novel, to The Lighthouse, 2 days in the life of a family on holiday are recorded, one before First World War and one after the war. When some of the characters have died, To the Lighthouse actually contains three parts. First is called The Window, second, Time Passes, and third, The Lighthouse. In first part, The Window, Mrs. Ramsay hosts a party which is actually uh, part of her husband, Mr. Ramsay's social circle, who is a rational man. And in that part, the whole event and past background are shown through the perspective of Mrs. Ramsay. Mrs. Ramsay appears as a woman of inspiration, motivation, that is different from her husband's detached scientific philosophical reasoning. But her inspirational and motivation even is significant for her husband and his disciples. Second part, the time passes, that is shared through the narrator's voice. That's a long time of 10 years where First World War happens, and it shows not at individual but collective level the tragedy of First World War. In last part, when Mrs. Ramsay has died, still characters are in need of the inspiration which she provided. And Mrs. Ramsay's worth is recognized by her husband and their guest. The promise which she made, that was a false promise, that was an illusion for her son, James, that they would go to the lighthouse. It looked a sheer stupidity of a woman to Mr. Ramsay, but in last part, Mr. Ramsay takes that adventure himself and leads her son to the lighthouse. So in this way, lighthouse from a remote image, from a remote reality, is transformed through the character of Mrs. Ramsay. Mrs. Ramsay continues to exert a spiritual influence over all those who return to the holiday home years later. Holiday home, that's a that's an area where they spend holidays in summer. The narrative and emotional focus of the novel is on Mrs. Ramsay, but the inner worlds of many of the characters are communicated, including Lily Briscoe. Lily Briscoe Lily Briscoe shares many aspects, many theories with Virginia Woolf herself. She is a painter and she tries to complete her painting, and that's the inspiration of Mrs. Ramsay that works and she completes it. The lighthouse is a suggestive and ambiguous symbol which takes on uniquely different meanings for each character and for each reader who attempts to interpret it. For a writer such as Virginia Woolf, who has no definite or fixed vision of reality, the suggestions of these symbols is an essential part of her art. Virginia Woolf was highly influential journalist and critic too. She wrote A Room of One's Own, that is thought a manifesto for feminist writers. Some of her many views and critical essays are collected in The Common Reader. Her husband, Leonard Woolf, founded the Hogarth Press, which published modernist writings or the writings of the Bloomsbury Group. The press published Virginia Woolf's own work and the works of other modernists like T.S. Eliot. The term stream of consciousness is widely used in modern fiction. The concern of writer is to examine for a moment an ordinary mind on an ordinary day. That's a statement of Virginia Woolf, which was recorded in her essay, Modern Fiction. Examine for a moment an ordinary mind on an ordinary day. She shares James Joyce is thought a stream of consciousness novelist who shares that idea, capturing a moment, an ordinary mind on an ordinary day.